Good evening. We're going to get started. Thank you. I am Deb Lelchuk. I am co-VP of Advocacy and Legislation for National Council of Jewish Women, Greater Long Beach and West Orange County. It's a mouthful, let me tell you. National Council of Jewish Women is more than 100 years old, and we have been advocating and fighting for the rights of women, children, and families for a very long time. Our section, Greater Long Beach and West Orange County, is more than 75 years old. We celebrated our 75th anniversary last summer, and we engage in advocacy, community service. We have social programming. If you're interested in membership information, please see me. I'm happy to hook you up with that. As to this evening, first I would like to thank Paul Levitt and the Temple Israel Social Action Committee for hosting and co-sponsoring this event. And now I am going to introduce Hannah Ham-Rosebrook, our chair of our Voting and Elections Committee, to start the program.
All right. Thank you for coming. Hey, it's so nice to see you guys all here. We should get right to the propositions. We have 3 people from League of Women Voters who have prepared themselves to explain the propositions and to answer questions. We have Renee Simon, who has been around here for quite some time at Temple Israel and also League of Women Voters. We have Marisa Falovich. And we have Diane Milkey, who will each present several of the propositions. So who's going to start, Renee? Thank you.
Rabbi takes his mask off. I can take my mask off. Okay, thank you very much for being here. The League of Women Voters, I'll give you a very brief rundown. We're about 100 years old. We came into being when women finally got the right to vote. And at that time, people thought, well, they got the right to vote, but they don't know how to vote, and they don't know anything about voting. And so was born the League of Women Voters. I must tell you that despite its name, we welcome men participants and members just as well as women members. This kind of program, explaining the ballot measures, is part of the League's voter service program. Our goal is to help individuals become well enough informed so that they can be intelligent voters. And the program, when we present the ballot measures, both sides, pros and cons, we try to be as impartial as possible. We're not here to persuade you to vote for one way or another. When we tell you that the supporters or opponents say, these are not the League's, what the League is saying, these are actually the arguments that people who are registered to be supporting or opposing the ballot measures, we're giving their positions. We'll be glad to answer questions after all the ballot measures have been gone through. Let's see, what else did I want to say? The other thing that the League does, besides voter service and being out in the community, registering people, helping them register to vote, is we do take positions on issues that we have studied. And we do, when we have studied an issue thoroughly and we take a position, we also talk with our legislators and try to persuade them to vote the way the League has come up with results of. But tonight we were going to give you a presentation. This is something the League does as a courtesy, as a service to the community. But I did bring a very small basket over here, and if anybody feels so inclined to help us pay for ink and printing and whatever else we do, we'd appreciate it. Okay, so Diane's going, we're going to go right down the line, 1, 27, 26, 27, et cetera. So Diane's going to present Proposition 1.
So, like Hannah said, my name is Diane Milkey. I have been with the League for probably 4 or 5 years, and I actually, right now I'm the secretary also of our group. I just wanted to thank you for inviting us here. I know you guys have a busy schedule, so it's a real pleasure to be here with you. So I'm presenting Proposition 1, which is the constitutional right to reproductive freedom. It is a legislative constitutional amendment, and it was placed on the ballot by the legislature. So the background with this is California already has a law that says individuals have the right to an abortion and the right to privacy about personal reproductive decisions. But these rights are not in the California Constitution, which requires a 2/3 vote of the legislature to change and a vote of the people. So that's what'll be on the ballot this in November. What it does is it would name reproductive freedom as a right in the California Constitution. This means that no one can interfere with the right to choose an abortion, to use contraception, or to obtain other reproductive health care. Voting no means that the California Constitution would not be changed to include the right for reproductive freedom. These rights, though, would continue under the existing law. The fiscal impact for this is there is no impact other than to put it on the ballot. So the supporters say that this amendment will enshrine the fundamental right to an abortion and contraception. Healthcare providers say this will allow care based on scientific facts, not politics. It will keep healthcare decisions where they belong, between the individual and their healthcare provider. Some of the supporters are the California Medical Association, Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California, the California Nurses Association, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and the UCLA Center on Reproductive Health, Law, and Policy. Opponents say this is an extreme, expensive, and pointless waste of taxpayer money. Individuals already have the right to choose under current California law, and a constitutional change is not needed to protect the individual's right to choose or reproductive privacy. This will allow people outside of California to come to California to obtain late-term abortions and use California resources. Some of the opponents are the California Catholic Conference, the Assembly member Jim Patterson, and Tack Allen, president of the International Faith-Based Coalition. So contributions, 99% came from the state of California for pro and con. So supporters' contributions so far this year have equaled $10,668,000. Some of the groups that have contributed were the Federated Indians of Graton Rancheria of $5 million, the California Medical Association of $850,000, Planned Parenthood, $500,000, Delaney Quinn, $500,000, and a group called Yes on Prop 1. No on Prop 1. Yes on Prop 1. And $275,000. Opponent contributions, 97% came from California, have totaled so far $1 million. Knights of Columbus have given $500,000. The East Valley Republican Women and Patriot Store have given $500,000. The Joanne Kohler has given $2,000. Another individual, David Dalton, has given $1,000. And another group, Delhart Construction Service, has also given $1,000. So in summary, voting yes will change the Constitution to add the individual's right to have a right to reproductive freedom. No, the rights would continue under existing law.
No, after we're all done, save them up, yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to talk about Propositions 26 and 27. I think you've seen a lot about them on television for the last number of months. Okay, so these, both of these ballot measures have something to do with permitting gambling on sporting events, but they're very, very different. And so let me tell you, to start with, I'll just tell you the basic, what I consider the basic difference between them, and then I'll go over each one. Proposition 26 is, tells people that they may, within the Indian casinos, they may bet on sporting events, and also a few other kinds of things. But for Proposition 27, the betting on sporting events is only by the internet or by cell phones. And so you don't have to go to any particular location. Anyone with a cell phone or a computer will be able to bet on that. Now, let's talk about each of them separately. Proposition 26, its title is Allows In-Person Roulette, Dice Games, Sports Wagering on Tribal Lands. And the state constitution has prohibited gambling in California at all, but the voters have given us opportunities to gamble in several different ways. So the California lottery was voted on by the voters, and that's considered gambling. The tribal casinos are certainly a place for gambling, mostly slot machines. The horse racing on most racetracks is betting on horses, and the California lottery. So, and the other thing, I'm sorry, is the card rooms that you will see frequently in communities where there's a variation on the game of poker in the card rooms. So, and what Proposition 26 does is a few things. One, it allows for privately managed, I guess, track horse racing that are in four counties in California to have, they're right now, I guess because they're private, but they have not had gambling, and so that would allow them to have gambling, betting on horses. And the other thing that Prop 26 would do relative to that is allow gambling, betting on sports events within within the confines of a casino. Come on in. And the income from betting, the casinos and the racetracks have to put 10% of their daily income from people betting into a separate fund that's been constructed in California. And that fund, that's called the California Sports Wagering Fund. And the money would be from the racetracks would go into that fund. 70% of that money would go to the general fund in California, which supports libraries and everything else. 15% would go for people who are addicted to gambling or have other problems, and 15% would go for enforcement of the gambling. If the Indian casinos, they have contracts with the state, and those are negotiated between the tribe and the state. They would have to amend it to allow roulette or dice games, craps. So that's basically what Proposition 26 does. The fiscal effects, according to the state legislative analyst, says that it's pretty hard to predict how many people are going to bet on horses or bet on sports events rather than go to the card rooms. But he concludes that it would increase state revenues from the racetrack and tribal sports betting that could reach up to tens of millions of dollars annually. And because the funds are going, the revenue from the track is going into this fund that goes into the general fund, that would increase the amount of money that would be used for public schools K through 12. And generally, about 40% of the funds in the general fund go to education. And as the general fund increases, there would be more money for education. Okay, so the people who are supporting Proposition 26, who are they? The supporters are the Barona Band of Mission Indians, the American Indian Chamber of Commerce, Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria, and a number of other Indian tribes, plus the NAACP, the SEIU Local 280, the union, and the California State Treasurer, Fiona Ma. And what do the supporters say? The supporters say Prop 26 will continue to aid the American Indian tribes to continue to develop self-sufficiency through highly regulated gaming on tribal lands with in-person sports wagering. The supporters also say that casinos benefit from the state of California by generating revenue that supports state programs and jobs. The opponents, on the other hand, among whom are the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the Los Angeles chapter, the California Black Chamber of Commerce, the National Veterans Foundation, California Senior Advocates League, and others, okay? And what the opponents say, Proposition 26 is sponsored by powerful interests that will use the new enforcement provisions to bury card rooms in frivolous litigation. And the opponents also say that this proposition will expand gambling at horse racing tracks to save the racing industry that injures horses. In a massive expansion of gambling in California, they say, by legalizing betting on professional, college, and amateur sports. So if you vote yes, if you vote no on anything, things stay the same. And so a yes vote on Proposition 26 would expand the opportunity for sports betting in Indian casinos and the opportunity for the Indian casinos to also expand their gambling to include roulette and craps. Okay, one thing I forgot to tell you before, which I will tell you now, that because sports gambling was prohibited in California, in 2018, the United States Supreme Court overturned a federal law that prohibited sports gambling. And all of a sudden, 35 states so far have gone to trying to implement some form of sports gambling in their states. And that is the reason that we've got these two ballot measures. Okay, Proposition 27 is quite different. It does relate totally to sports betting. However, its title is, it allows online and mobile sports wagering outside tribal lands. And it says here, the committee that circulated the petitions to place the measure on the ballot received funding from sports betting corporations. Okay, so what would Proposition 27 do? It would permit tribes, Indian tribes, or gambling corporations to establish sports betting. Okay, everyone. It requires that the people who are betting be over 21 or 21 or older, and it permits also betting on athletic events and some other non-athletic events. But it bans bets on high school sports, or, interestingly, it bans betting on elections. Okay, so watch what you do. Anyway, so what else does Prop 27 do? It requires either the tribes, if they choose to do this on their own, or the gambling corporations to receive a 5-year license from the state of California. And that is a renewable license. If the Indian tribes want to apply and get that license, it would cost the Indian tribes $10 million and $1 million to renew it at its expiration. But for the private gambling corporations, for them to apply for a 5-year license, it would cost them $100 million and $10 million on renewal. Gives you some idea of the amounts of money that we're talking about with gambling, okay? All right, and so that money would go into the state of California, of course. Then there are additional payments that come to California. The tribes and the gambling companies would pay 10% of the monthly revenue from any sports gambling that occurs, and that money would go into a separate fund, which I will tell you in a minute. But first, what would that money go for? Off the top would be the administration of the whole gambling operation. And then the next 85% of that money would go for homelessness and gambling addiction programs. And that funds would go for the homeless and gambling addiction programs, that funds would go to cities and counties. And then the next 15% would go to tribes that do not have sports gambling. And so this would be a SOP kind of thing, but a help for those tribes that are not involved in this. It also creates a new unit within the California Department of Justice to regulate online sports betting. The revenue, also as in 27, the funds would go towards the general fund, and that would go towards education, raising increase for education. But here they specifically say that although the funds may go into the general fund, that cannot be used to adjust the income for education. And it also says that this is partly a constitutional amendment. The rest of it is a law, and this 27 says that the legislature cannot amend that law, having to do with almost everything having to do with how 27 is handled, except to place it on the ballot for the voters to decide. Okay. The legislative analyst says that there are so many variables, it's pretty hard to determine how much money is going to go where, but nonetheless, he feels that it would increase the annual state revenues ranging from hundreds of millions, but more likely not more than 500 million annually. That would be funds coming to the state of California. So who is supporting it, and what do the supporters say? Those who are supporting Prop 27 say that are the San Diego Regional Task Force on Homelessness, Middletown Rancheria of Pomo Indians of California, another Indian tribe, the Valley of Pomo Indians, another one, Major League Baseball. I don't know how you count that to figure out what they're doing, but nonetheless, Major League Baseball is considered a supporter. The mayor of Sacramento and the mayor of Oakland. And what do the supporters say? The supporters say that Prop 27 requires state-of-the-art technology to ensure that minors do not place bets. And Prop 27 says that it requires strict auditing of the use of the money in the online sports betting trust fund to make sure the money is appropriately used for people who are homeless and tribes that are to receive funds. Who is opposing Prop 27? The opposed are the Tribal Alliance of Sovereign Indian Nations, the Salvation Army of San Bernardino, California Nations of Indian Gaming Association, League of California Cities, both political parties, the California Democratic Party, the California Republican Party, the Teachers Association, and others. And what do the opponents say? The opponents say online sports betting will not generate jobs or create investment in the state because the sports betting operators will retain most of the profits. And the opponents say allowing promotion offers, oh, I forgot to mention that one, allowing promotion offers to be deducted from the gross betting revenue under Prop 27 will reduce the revenue available to the state. Let me backtrack very quickly. The monthly revenue that is the 10% of the monthly revenue that goes to the state is that revenue less any money that they pay out for winning bets, if there's any federal gambling taxes, and less vouchers, really, in order to encourage people to use to bet. Many of these private corporations, these large corporations, will dole out vouchers. You come bet on the sports team, and this voucher is as good as $50. So you can essentially bet $50, but it's free $50. And so any revenues that are returned from people who won money using a voucher, that also is deducted from the profits. Yeah, from the 10%. Okay, so if you vote yes, not you, anyone who votes yes on Proposition 27 would be permitting the gambling online, would be permitting online sports betting using either a cell phone or a computer. And essentially that's the difference, and how the funds are distributed. Where is money coming from to support and oppose Prop 27? Prop 27 supporters have so far generated and raised, this is money that goes towards advertising and everything else that they spend money on, $169,242,000. And the opponents of Prop 27 have raised $213,658,000. So there's a lot of money involved. And if, I don't have that. Maybe you have that. I don't have the specific sources.
For 27,
Yeah, okay.
the top 5 for 427.
Four.
So for 27.
Yeah, come up here and do that.
The top 5 supporters for 27 are Yes on 27, Solutions to Homelessness and Mental Health Support, the San Diego Regional Task Force on Homelessness, Middletown Rancheria of Pomo Indians of California, Local Initiatives Support Corporation, and the Santa Rosa Rancheria Taquioca Tribe. Probably not pronouncing that right.
But those general names don't tell you anything.
Yeah, and then Major League Baseball and the mayors of Sacramento, Oakland, and Fresno.
Yeah, that's what we got. Okay.
And then the opponents are opponents, yes on 26, no on 27. Coalition
doesn't
for
tell you
Safe and
who they
Responsible, yeah. No on 27.
Try that one, the Tribal
Okay.
Alliance.
Tribal Alliance of Sovereign Indian Nations, the Ione Band of Miwok Indians, Salvation Army of San Bernardino, California Nations Indian Gaming Association, one homeless project, Alpha Project for the Homeless.
And these are
Yeah.
the contributions from. Right. Yeah, okay.
Well, those are the opponents.
I
of
know
the-
that,
yeah.
but she wanted
Yeah.
to know who was
Oh,
putting
the
up the money. There
Yeah.
are 4 major private corporations whose business is gambling.
Yeah, Betfair, like you said, Crown Gambling, which is the DraftKings, Bet MGM, and then Penn Interactive Ventures, and then Bally's.
Okay, so are you doing? They're really totally different measures. Oh, yes, they can.
Yeah, they both can.
They can both win. They can both win. One is addressing gambling as on the internet, which is different from gambling within a casino. And so if they both win, they can both be effective. All right, I really don't want to get into answering questions now, but the question was, if both pass, are they both qualified to, will they both be effective? And the information I have says, yes, they're considered different kind of gambling, and if both pass, both would become effective. That's all right, yeah.
But if they both pass and there's like one says you can't do this and the other says you can on the same topic, the one with the most votes will supersede the one than the other one.
That's not the information I have. Who's doing 29? 28, excuse me.
Hello. Okay, Proposition 28. provides additional funding for arts and music education in public schools initiative statute. So the initiative statute means that it was put on the ballot through the signature gathering process. Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks. So this measure will provide additional funding for arts and music education in all K through 12 public schools, including charter schools, by annually allocating from the state general fund an amount equal to 1% of the required state and local funding for public schools. So a little background on this. The California public school system has about 6 million students in K through 12. Roughly about 60% of those students are from low-income families, which means they're eligible for reduced price lunches or free lunches. The public schools are operated by school districts and charter schools under the control of local governing boards, such as school boards. So in 1988, Prop 98 passed, and that changed the California Constitution to require a minimum percentage of the state budget to be spent on public schools and community college. That minimum guarantees either 40% of the state general fund, like Renee was mentioning, or the prior year's minimum guarantee adjusted for student attendance and cost of living. There's currently no guaranteed source of annual funding in the budget specifically for arts and music education in K through 12 public schools. But despite this, the state law requires schools to provide art and music instruction to all students in grades 1 through 6 as an elective for 7 and 8. And also high school students must complete 1 year of arts or music education, foreign language, or career technical education to meet their graduation requirements. The state does fund some before and after school programs which require an enrichment component that may contain arts and music education. So this proposal would require an additional portion of the state's general fund to be set aside for arts and music education in K through 12 public schools. And it would require that funding to be for arts and music to be at least 1% of the funding received by the schools the prior year under Prop 98. So from that pool, that 1% pool, 70% of that funding would be allocated to schools based on their proportion of California's total enrollment, and the remaining 30% of the funding would be allocated to low-income schools based on their enrollment. For larger schools with 500 students or more, Prop 28 requires at least 80% of the funding to be used to hire new staff. Any remaining could be used for training, supplies, materials, and school principals would determine how the funds are spent. Prop 28 also requires that local governing boards certify each year that the funding received was spent on arts education, and a spending report must be made public on the school district website. So the fiscal impact of this, according to the legislative analyst, is that it would increase state costs by about $1 billion annually, which is less than 0.5% of the state's total general fund budget. Those signing arguments for Prop 28 are Californians for Arts and Music in Public Schools, the California Teachers Association, and the California State PTA. Supporters say that arts and music education can improve a student's mental health, social development, critical thinking, and academic performance in other subjects like reading and math. Only 1 in 5 California public schools has a dedicated teacher for arts or music programs, and Prop 28 would increase funding for educational programs without raising taxes. There were no formal arguments submitted to the Secretary of State opposing this proposition, but an LA Times editorial from November of last year criticized this as, quote, ballot box budgeting that reduces the ability to fund other programs that are equally important. Campaign finance supporting Prop 28 contributions totaled $10.1 million, $4.2 million from Austin Buettner, $2 million from the California Teachers Association, and $1.2 million from Fender Musical Instruments Corp. There are no contributions opposing this. So a yes vote means that the state would be required to set aside some of its revenue to fund arts and music education in K through 12 public schools, and no means that things stay the way they are now, and funding for arts education would continue to be dependent on state and local budget decisions.
But the LA Times came out and endorsed Prop 28, even after that. Okay, I've got Prop 29, which requires on-site licensed medical professionals at kidney dialysis clinics and establishes other state requirements. And this was an initiative placed on the ballot by petition signatures. So if you think you've heard of this before, you have. The last two general elections also had something along the same line. So I'll get to that at the end. For people who have, so the background on this is for people who have chronic kidney disease, dialysis is required, usually 3 days a week. Outpatient services are provided in clinics. In California, 3/4 of the clinics are owned by two companies, DaVita and Fresenius. The remaining clinics are operated by nonprofit or for-profit entities. Most patients are covered by Medicare or Medi-Cal, although some patients are covered by private insurance, which generally pays better than Medicare and Medi-Cal. Patients are required to be seen by their own physician once a month, and all clinics have a medical director. So what this bill would do is it requires a physician, nurse practitioner, or physician's assistant to be on site during treatment. The clinics to disclose ownership interests and to report infection data. Clinics would need permission from the state before closing or reducing services and cannot refuse treatment based on how a patient pays for their services. A no vote would mean that the dialysis clinics continue to operate as they do now. So the supporters say dialysis is a dangerous procedure and licensed independent practitioners need to be present if there's an emergency. Infection rates would be reported and patients would not face discrimination based on their source of payment. Some supporters are SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West, and Baptist Ministers Conference of Los Angeles. The opponents say clinics already have highly trained staff and every patient is under the care of their own physician. Costs would increase, which would put clinics at risk of closing. It would take highly trained clinicians away from hospitals and emergency rooms to staff the clinics. Some opponents are the American Nurses Association of California, the California Medical Association, and a group called Stop Yet Another Dangerous Dialysis Proposition. Supporter contributions came mainly from SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West, which was 100% from California, totaling $8,200,000. Opponents' contributions, 92% came from California, were $86,333,000. $86,333,000. So DaVita contributed $52 million. Fresenius has contributed $27 million. U.S. Renal Care has contributed $6 million. Satellite Healthcare has contributed $250,000, and Dialysis Clinics, Inc. have contributed $100,000. So a summary of this bill, if you vote yes, it would have physicians, nurse practitioners, or physician assistants on site during operating hours. No would keep the operations the same as they are now. So the difference between this and the last two propositions, in 2020, they put on the ballot that a physician would have to be in the clinic at all times. So this time, they've added nurse practitioners and physician assistants. 2018, they wanted to cap the money that each of the dialysis companies were making. So both of those, 2018 and 2020, got turned down. So they're trying it again this year.
Okay, Proposition 30 provides funding for programs to reduce air pollution and prevent wildfires by increasing tax on personal income over $2 million. It's an initiative statute. put on the ballot through the signature gathering process. So this will increase tax on personal income over $2 million by 1.75% for individuals and married couples, and allocates new tax revenues to promote zero-emission vehicles, which we call ZEVs, and prevent wildfires. It also requires audits of these programs and expenditures. So some background on this. Last year, California raised more than $130 billion in revenue from personal income taxes, and California currently has a budget surplus of $97 billion. In response to climate change, California has implemented a number of programs to promote ZEVs. This includes requiring ride-sharing companies such as Uber and Lyft to use an increasing number of ZEVs. The state typically spends hundreds of millions of dollars annually on ZEV programs, and also recently committed to spending about $10 billion over a 5-year period on the programs. Additionally, in late August, the California Air Resources Board approved a rule called the ZEV Mandate to phase out traditional gas-powered cars, requiring 100% of new car sales to be ZEVs by 2035. State agencies are responsible for wildfire suppression and prevention on about a third of state land, with federal and local agencies responsible for the rest. And the annual state budget for wildfires is approximately $2 to $4 billion. So this proposal would increase the income tax rate by 1.75% on individual incomes above $2 million. The funds would be put into a special fund that's separate from the general fund and be allocated as follows. So 45% would promote the purchase of ZEVs, including subsidies and rebates for households, businesses, and governments on cars, trucks, and buses. 35% of the funding would increase the availability of ZEV infrastructure like charging stations. And from that 80% total, half of those funds must benefit people who live in heavily polluted or low-income communities. The remaining 20% would help fund wildfire suppression and prevention, prioritizing spending to hire, train, and retrain state firefighters. The tax increase would end on January 1st, 2043, or earlier if there are 3 consecutive calendar years where the statewide greenhouse gas emissions are 80% below 1990 levels. The fiscal impact on this, the new tax on high-income taxpayers typically would raise about $3.5 billion to $5 billion annually, growing over time, most likely due to the stock market. The proposition would increase state funding for ZEVs by $2.8 billion to $4 billion annually. And because of the recently passed ZEV mandate, the main effect would probably be shifting who pays for ZEVs rather than increasing the sales overall. The proposition would increase state funding for wildfire response and prevention activities by about $700 million to $1 billion annually. And the measure could help decrease state and local costs for wildfire suppression and prevention through the size of the though the size of the fiscal effects is difficult to predict. Some taxpayers may try to reduce the amount of income tax they owe, and some amount of spending required by Prop 30 would count towards the total state spending limit, which is called the GAN limit, meaning that the required spending on ZEVs and wildfire prevention could result in cutbacks in other areas that the general fund supports, like education. So those signing arguments for Prop 30 are the Cal Fire State Firefighters, the American Lung Association, and the Coalition for Clean Air. And the supporters say that existing programs are insufficient to address California's poor air quality, which is largely caused by automobile exhaust and wildfire smoke. Only the wealthiest 0.2%, or about 35,000 people, will be impacted. Personal income below $2 million is not taxed. It makes electric vehicles more affordable and expands charging infrastructure. It prevents wildfires, which are getting worse, and protects homes by funding prevention programs. Those signing arguments against Prop 30 are the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, the California Small Business Association, and United Latinos Action. And the Governor Gavin Newsom and the California Republican Party have also opposed this. California, They say that California is already spending more than $50 billion for a multi-year climate investment, including $10 billion for ZEVs. There's no guarantee that Prop 30 will make ZEVs affordable for most California families. Prop 30 locks money from income taxes, normally a major source of school funding, into special interests. And Prop 30 is Lyft's attempt to get taxpayers to help foot the bill for the requirement to increase the number of ZEVs used. As of October 6th, the contributions supporting Prop 30 total $46.8 million. $45 million of that come from Lyft, another $1 million from International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and about $200,000 from the Zinc Collective LLC. The money opposing Prop 30 totals about $12 million, mostly from individuals, $1 million each from Catherine Dean, Reed Hastings, Mark Heising, Michael Moritz, and $955,000 from Sierra Pacific Industries. So a yes vote on this means that for every dollar a person makes over $2 million, an additional 1.57% tax will be charged, and the revenue collected from this additional tax would support zero-emission vehicle programs and wildfire response and prevention activities. And a no vote means there would be no change made to personal income tax over $2 million. So I'll also be talking about Prop 31, which is a referendum on a 2020 law that would prohibit the retail sale of certain flavored tobacco products. So unlike the other initiative statutes, this is a referendum, which is asking that a law that's already been passed by the legislator and signed by the governor to be approved by voters. So any entity or person that disagrees with the law has 90 days from the date of enactment to circulate a petition asking for a referendum, and if they get enough signatures, then the law can't be enforced until the next election. So in August 2020, the California legislature passed SB 793, which prohibits in-person stores and vending machines from selling most flavored tobacco products. And it defines flavored tobacco as those that have a flavor apart from regular tobacco, like mint, vanilla, fruit. It includes flavored cigarettes like menthol, pods for vape pens, tank systems, e-cigarettes, chewing tobacco. But it does not ban certain premium handmade cigars, loose leaf tobacco, and shisha or hookah. So in California, about 10% of adults and youth use tobacco products, and around 1/3 of Californians live in areas that already have bans on certain flavored tobacco, like menthol cigarettes. California charges tobacco taxes on cigarettes, e-cigarettes, basically all tobacco products. And last year, the state tobacco taxes raised about $2 billion. Previous propositions direct most of this revenue to specific programs, including healthcare, early childhood programs, and tobacco control, like preventing sales to youth. So a yes vote on Prop 31 means that SB 793 is approved, and if that law is approved, then in-person stores and vending machines couldn't sell flavored tobacco anymore, and it would charge a $250 penalty against any stores and vending machine owners for every violation of that law. The fiscal impact of this, Prop 31 would likely reduce the state tobacco tax revenues by tens of millions of dollars to around 100 million. That revenue loss would reduce funding for programs like healthcare, but the amount really depends on how consumers respond, if those smoking flavored products would switch to unflavored, or if they stop using tobacco entirely, which would be a larger reduction in that overall revenue. State and local governments pay for healthcare for their employees and low-income people. Prop 31 would likely reduce tobacco use, which would lead to better health. So in the short term, that would probably reduce the healthcare costs, but it would lead to a longer lifespan. So in the long term, it might increase healthcare costs. So the net change is really uncertain. So supporters signing arguments for Prop 31 are the American Academy of Pediatrics, California, the American Heart Association, and the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. And they say that big tobacco targets children. 4 out of 5 kids who have used tobacco started with a flavor product which hides the taste of a nicotine hit. Tobacco is the #1 preventable cause of death in California, where tobacco-related diseases kill 40,000 people each year, and Big Tobacco preys on Black neighborhoods, where 85% of smokers use menthols. Those signing arguments against Prop 31 are the California Department of Finance, the California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, and the California Taxpayer Protection Committee. And they say that it's already illegal to sell any tobacco products to anyone under the age of 21. Prop 31 will increase crime, driving sales from licensed retailers to underground markets, and it goes too far in banning products which the FDA allows, leading consumers to choose tobacco products that are more harmful. So campaign contributions supporting this total about $17.2 million, with $15.3 million coming from Michael Bloomberg, $1.1 million from Kaiser Permanente, $250,000 from California Teachers Association, and $123,000 from the American Cancer Society. Opposing Prop 31 totals $23.2 million, basically all from Big Tobacco. So $11.2 from RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company, $11 million from Philip Morris USA, $500,000 from ITG Brands, $500,000 from Swedish Match North America. So a yes vote on this means SB 793 goes into effect and bans the sale of most flavored tobacco products, and a no vote means that SB 793 is repealed and flavored tobacco will remain legal.
Those are the 7 state ballot measures. There are 4 local, I think, 2 LA County, and I think 1 maybe from, 2 from the school district. So would you like to go on and get the local ones as well? Yes. Yes. Okay, you're going to handle some of those?
Use the microphone, Renee.
Yes, sorry.
For 2 reasons. One is for in here, but also we're live streaming.
Oh,
So
God.
they cannot hear anything that is not directly.
Thank you. That's a very, very wise information. Okay. Diane, you want to do whatever local ones you're going to do? Thank you.
I'm going to do the LA County. Oh, okay. Okay, so I've got the 2 LA County that we're giving you information on. One is LA County Measure A, which is providing authority to remove an elected sheriff for cause. And this is an amendment to the Los Angeles County Charter passed by the Board of Supervisors. So the background to this is some civil rights groups and families have formed a coalition called Check the Sheriff, after what they called years of overreach by sheriff's deputies. The group have asked the previous and the present sheriff to address deputy harassment and misconduct, but were unsuccessful. The Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors has issued subpoenas to Sheriff Villanueva, but he has not appeared in response to the subpoenas. Consequently, the Board of Supervisors, in a 4-to-1 vote, placed a measure on the November ballot to amend the LA County Charter to remove the sheriff for serious violations of public trust. Other counties have adopted similar measures to provide for greater civilian oversight and accountability. So what it would do is a yes vote supports allowing the LA County Board of Supervisors by a 4/5 vote to remove the sheriff for cause. The definition of cause is violation of laws related to the sheriff's duties, repeated neglect of the sheriff's duties, misuse of public funds or properties, or willful falsification of documents, or obstruction of an investigation into the department's conduct. A no vote opposes allowing the LA Board of Supervisors by a 4/5 vote to remove the sheriff for cause. So the fiscal impact of this would be negligible. Supporters say the issue of sheriff accountability before the county is both urgent and systemic, having impacted past generations and potential future generations. The county has had a long and troubling history with sheriff oversight. The amendment will provide residents with the oversight of the sheriff's department they expect and free from law enforcement abuse. Some of the supporters are County Supervisors Sheila Kuehl, Holly Mitchell, and Hilda Solis, Dolores Huerta, and 120 community organizations. Opponents say the amendment is a recipe for public corruption, allowing political appointees with an agenda to determine cause is fundamentally flawed. Giving the Board of Supervisors authority to remove an elected sheriff takes the power away from the public. It will disenfranchise voters. There's already a recall process to remove elected officials. So opponents are County Supervisor Catherine Barger, Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and the California Libertarian Party. There was no information for contributors either for or against. So to summarize, a yes vote would allow the county supervisors with a 4/5 vote to remove the sheriff for cause. A no vote would keep the process as it is, where we can remove county officials by recall or during an election season. So that's LA County Measure A, providing authority to remove an elected sheriff for cause. You asked if the LA Times supported it. You know, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. They weren't on. So I looked at the state, the Secretary of State, and then the league itself puts out information, and then Ballotpedia is a good source to look at also. So, but yeah, I haven't put the LA Times, even though I do get it. I haven't put their what they said. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is County Measure C, Cannabis Business Tax Measure, also known as Marijuana Business Tax Measure. And this was placed on by a resolution approved by 4/5 vote of the County Board of Supervisors. So the background to this is currently the county is developing a cannabis business permitting process that is expected to launch by late 2023. The needs and impact of legal cannabis industry will continue to shift in the coming years, and tax revenue can help support the county's development of health and social equity-led cannabis program. The Board of Supervisors can either decrease or increase these tax rates up to a maximum rate provided by the measure. After the first 3 years, the initial rates are in effect depending on the market for cannabis. So what it would do, it would authorize the County of Los Angeles to impose a general tax on the cannabis business activities within unincorporated areas of LA County. This would include activities such as cultivating, selling, distributing, or testing cannabis or cannabis products. Personal cannabis cultivation is exempted from this tax. Depending on the activity, the tax rate will vary starting July 1st, 2023, and then increase July 1st, 2026, unless this is repealed by the voters. So if it's passed, but then they decide to repeal it, they can. Beginning July 1st, 2027, the maximum tax rate for cultivation will be adjusted for inflation. Processes for registration, collection, enforcement, and tax appeals will also be established. Revenue derived will be deposited into the county's general fund. So a yes vote would enact this measure, a no vote would prevent this tax from being implemented. So the fiscal impact, it is estimated to generate approximately $10 million to $15 million annually unless it's stopped by the voters. Supporters say revenue may be used to fund a broad array of programs or services that can benefit all residents of the county, such as workforce and economic development programs, reinvestment in communities disproportionately impacted by historical and current cannabis policies, enforcement and compliance programs to combat the proliferation of untested and unsafe cannabis, and mitigation of adverse environmental impacts. The first crucial step toward the full implementation of an equitable, legal, commercial cannabis market in Los Angeles County. So some of the supporters are Rafael Cabajal, Director of the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, Ophelia Chong, founder of the Asian Americans for Cannabis Education, Jonathan Savetko, Executive Director of the United Cannabis Business Association, Cheryl A. Branch, Executive Director of the Los Angeles Metropolitan Churches, and Lindsay Robinson, Executive Director of the California Cannabis Industry Association. Opponents say these taxes are the precise reason that black market for marijuana is estimated to be twice the legal market. Buyers will be gouged with these taxes who will pay for, and so the people will pay for a cheaper alternative. The county bureaucracy will fight every step of the way to prevent this tax from being recalled by the voters. So some of the supporters are Mimi Robson, chair of the Libertarian Party of California, and Daniel Welby, the chair of the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles County. And again, there was no information on supporters or opponents' contributions for this. So yes would impose a tax on cannabis activities. No, no tax would be imposed. But not in the city of Long Beach. It's just unincorporated areas of LA County. Yeah.
Okay. Long Beach Measure BB is a charter amendment to consolidate the Long Beach Water and Gas Departments. So it is a charter amendment to consolidate the Long Beach Water and Gas Departments. It's Measure BB. So on August 9th, 2022, the Long Beach City Council placed Measure BB on the ballot. It would primarily amend the Long Beach City Charter so that the existing municipal water, sewer, and gas utilities would be consolidated into a single department governed by the existing Long Beach Board of Water Commissioners. That board would be renamed the Long Beach Board of Public Utilities Commissioners, and the Long Beach Water Department would be renamed the Long Beach Public Utilities Department. So the measure would transfer the administration and control of the gas utility from the City Council to the Board of Public Utilities Commissioners, including the authority to set rates and charges related to the provision of natural gas. And the measure would not amend current limitations on transfers from the water, sewer, and gas funds to the city's general fund. If approved by voters, the measure would take effect immediately, but it's expected that the actual process of consolidation could take several months. The fiscal impacts of this are unclear, but it's expected that over the long term, the consolidation would result in better operational efficiency and would probably lower operating costs. Those signing arguments for BB are the Long Beach Water Department, Long Beach Board of Water Commissioners, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, and the CSU Office of the Chancellor. Supporters say that Yes on BB will initiate climate action and clean energy work. It will upgrade city utility systems to protect local neighborhoods. It reduces the impacts to streets through coordinated pipeline repairs. It eliminates duplicative costs in operations, and it achieves cost savings through greater economies of scale. Those signing arguments against BB are Glennis Dolce, Ray Gabelick, Joseph Weinstein, and Juana Valle. And the opponents say that the state law requires that water customers be billed only for expenses of providing water, and in a previous voter-approved measure to allow the water department revenues to be transferred to the city's general fund, that was later ruled unconstitutional. Inflating our water bills is the only evident compelling reason for this measure, and the water and gas departments have distinct service objectives and distinct pipeline networks. So a yes vote means the existing municipal water, sewer, and gas would be consolidated into a single department, and a no vote means no change, and water and gas would be separate entities.
There are 4, I guess, local Long Beach issues, 3 of which are quite straightforward, and their numbers are, oh Well, I'm not sure I know their numbers. Thank you. That's a good, okay. What they do is coordinate the elections for the city council, for city officers, to match the elections for the state, so that there would be you would not be voting at different times as you presently do for for city council members, mayor, city attorney, and all the rest of them. And you have the numbers and I don't, but, okay. And the other one does the same thing for the school board, and which also has its own dates and times for elections. And so it would bring all the school board elections in line with the state primaries and general elections. So it's LBC, okay. Okay. Okay, and so I think I don't have the official arguments for and against, but basically, the turnout for school board elections is very low. Even in the primary, there were only 18% of the registered voters who even voted in the mayoral elections. Let me get to this. Okay, and so those two, the LBU and LBC, okay, are intended to coordinate all of the local elections to match the time of the state primary and general election. And I presume that the reason is to increase voter turnout, but if you have official arguments against it, I don't have those. Okay, and then Diane, you would like to, we have one other local ballot measure, which changes the Citizen Police Review Commission that we currently have, and I will tell you that Barbara Shoag, sitting here, was on the first Citizen Review Commission and knows probably more about it than most everybody else. So you may talk to that yourself later. But Barbara, Diane, you want to go and do that?
So Measure E is the charter amendment to add a director of police oversight and a police oversight commission. So the background on this is this measure would amend the city charter to add a director of police oversight and a police oversight commission, which would replace the Citizen Police Complaint Commission. The director would be appointed by the city council and have the authority to audit all investigations completed by the police department's Internal Affairs Division and prepare annual reports for the commission and city council. The director would investigate complaints against the police chief and command staff along with major uses of force. The commission would be composed of 7 commissioners appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. The commission would provide the director with auditing priorities, receive briefings on high-profile incidents, review and approve recommendations made by the director, and provide feedback on the director reports. So what it would do is a yes vote would establish a police oversight commission and add a police oversight director to replace the existing Citizen Police Complaint Commission. A no vote would keep the existing Citizen Police Complaint Commission in place. There would be so for the fiscal impact, there would be an anticipated structural cost increase to the general fund of approximately $900,000. Supporters say the revised Police Oversight Commission would ensure that Long Beach has a stronger and more independent review of the police and a more responsive model with community input. The director would be hired and fired by the city council, ensuring the new position is responsive to the vote of the people. The old model does not have oversight, the ability to be on the scene at critical incidents, or have access to internal affairs investigations. Some of the supporters are Dr. Suli Saro, who's a doctor and MPA, a doctor of education and MPA, and a Long Beach City Council member, Michael G. Soto, an attorney, Dana Buchanan, a businesswoman, chair of the Citizens Police Complaint Commission, and a community leader, and Dr. Miles Nevin, who is also a doctor of education and the executive director of the CSULB Associated Students. Opponents say the Long Beach already has an oversight commission. Instead of strengthening the existing system, it will abolish civilian oversight and make the commission into lackeys. Strengthening the existing system by putting teeth into it rather than dissolving the present, strengthen the existing system by putting teeth into it rather than dissolve the present commission. Some of the opponents are Stephen Downing, a screenwriter, producer, activist, and investigative journalist, Ann Prophet, who has been in automotive sales and service, but she's also a photojournalist and a contributing editor to a journal on automotive sales and service, and Juan O'Valley, a former Long Beach Water Department analyst. And there was no data on the Long Beach Finance portal for donations for or against.
Yeah. Where? Oh, Q. Oh, yes. Do you want to do that?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, one more. So one more, I'm gonna do Proposition Q, which is also a Long Beach proposition. And this, yeah, it's for the schools. Placed on the ballot by a resolution of the Board of Education of the Long Beach Unified School District. So the background to this is the Long Beach Unified School District instructs 68,000 students from the cities of Long Beach, Lakewood, Signal Hill, and Avalon. A major challenge facing the district is many facilities are more than 60 years old, and some buildings were constructed more than a century ago. Updates are needed to support modern learning standards. In addition, repairs are needed to remove hazardous substances such as lead paint, asbestos, and mold. Plumbing and water systems need updating. So what it would do is a yes vote would authorize the Board of Education to issue general obligation bonds, in an amount not to exceed $1,700,000,000. Proceeds will be used for repairing, upgrading, and constructing classrooms and other school facilities. This would include, but is not limited to, heating, ventilation, lighting, wiring, security, and plumbing systems, retrofitting classrooms, removing hazardous substances, and installing renewable and clean energy technologies, improving accessibility, and installing instructional technology. The bond proceeds may not be used for administrator salaries or operational expenditures. Independent and financial audits would be conducted to ensure the bonds are spent only for projects identified in the measure. The board will appoint an independent citizens oversight committee, and bond proceeds will be deposited into an account created for the bond funds. Certain projects may be augmented with funding from matching state funds. A no vote would not allow the board to issue general obligation bonds. So the fiscal impact for this is the estimate of total debt service, including principal and interest, is $4,100,000,000. So that would be interest of $2,400,000,000. Yeah, it's over a long period of time. I don't have what the period of time is. Voting, so supporters say voting for Measure Q will make a lasting positive impact upon our children, schools, and neighborhoods. Repairing the schools and updating technology will pave the way for students' success in the future. It will ensure that every student learns in a classroom that is safe and clean and has access to 21st century learning in the STEM classes. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. Students with disabilities will have access to classroom. Some of the supporters are Lee Underwood, Milliken and Long Beach Unified School District Teacher of the Year, Robert Garcia, Mayor of Long Beach, Patrick O'Donnell, State Assembly Member and Teacher, and Lena Gonzalez, California State Senator and an LBUSD parent. Opponents say, on average, every homeowner's tax bill will increase by $500 until 2062. So it'll be 2062 that this would be paid off. Housing costs will go up, rents will be raised. The projects are the same list as Measure E, which was approved in 2016, and nothing has been done with that $1.5 billion. Accountability safeguards are ineffective. Some of the opponents are Mimi Robson, Chair of the Libertarian Party of California, Daniel Welby, Chair of the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles County, Mark Reynolds, Director of Operations Digital Glue, and Stephen Petzold, Open Government Advocate. And again, there wasn't any information on contributions for or against on the Long Beach website.
We're now ready to take all your questions and comments, of which we can probably answer some. But please help yourself. The mic's here, and we will welcome your comments and your questions.
Anybody on this side? I'm waiting. The microphone had to come up.
Just a clarification on Prop 1. You said it required 2/3 of the legislators to vote for it, and then it had to pass in an election. Is it at 2/3 of the population or just 50% plus
There's a
one?
legislature.
But what about, do we have to pass it at 2/3 because it's a constitutional
No, it
amendment?
should be a simple majority.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yes.
So on, I think it's 27, is the one where it's backed primarily by gaming people on the East Coast or something, right?
The 27 is primarily betting on sports on the internet or on a cell phone.
Phone, okay. And did I get this right, that of the profits, 10% comes to California, and of that 10%, 85% of that 10% goes towards homeless?
For the homeless, yes.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
There's a question here from the chat room on the stream. Can Barbara Shoag share her opinion on Measure E? Would you like to?
Thanks. Yeah, I was involved in getting it on the ballot and passed
You may take your mask off to talk.
30 years ago. And in that ballot measure, it included hearings and subpoena power. So anyone who had a complaint against the
Right
police,
into the mic.
okay, anybody who had a complaint against the police could come to this commission. But when it came time to make the rules, I used to tell people I was 4 inches taller and weighed 40 pounds more until they beat me into submission. Because what happened was, we had a very meek administrator. He had been a library administrator, and he'd say, oh, the police, they have so much, oh, there could be homeless people in the libraries, and you have to be so careful. And then there was a retired sheriff who was one of the new members of the commission. And so instead of having subpoena power and hearings, we ended up with investigators. And the investigators would talk to different people, and we'd get a report. But we almost never heard from any of the complaining parties, and we just read the report. It was very disappointing. And from what I understand, it hasn't changed very much. There was once, a long time ago, the Press Telegram, when it was more of a newspaper than it is today, did a report on the 9 officers against whom most complaints have been filed in the city of Long Beach. Anybody can have one complaint against them, you know, that, I mean, anybody can. But at any rate, we never knew who the police officers were against whom the complaints were filed. And I just remember, I was on for 5 years, and I was the chair at the beginning, and I just remembered there was a pattern of behavior that we kept seeing about this one officer. And we said, this sounds like the same officer we've seen again. Oh yes, and it was a woman officer. We never knew her name, and so she was off. You know, she couldn't be out on the street. And a number of months or a year passed, and all of a sudden, we that sounds like that woman, and it was. Something had happened, and they put everybody back on the street. But we really were very frustrated, and from what I understand, that frustration remains to this day, that they're not the teeth that it was supposed to have. I'm not sure if this is any better. Apparently, the city spent a lot of money having an investigator look at the different options and came up with this. I think I'll vote for it because I know what we're doing now isn't working. Though now I think they may know who the officer is against whom the complaint is filed. I'm not sure it'll be better, but I don't think it can be any worse. So at this point, I'll probably vote yes.
Thank you. One of the arguments I have heard against the new measure is that it does not give neither the director nor the new commission a subpoena power.
Well, we had it and we couldn't use it.
And didn't use it anyway. Yeah.
I mean, you know, theoretically, we had it.
Well, I think.
I mean, I don't think this is a wonderful alternative.
Yeah.
I just know, I think what we have now is not working, and so give something else a try, maybe.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm curious if anyone knows whether the consolidation of the municipal water, sewer, and gas into a commission would give residents less access to the decision-making and influence over the rate-making than we currently have through city council. That's just one of my concerns.
At the current policy in Long Beach, the Water Commission actually makes all the decisions on water rates. That commission would continue and would then be also responsible for gas. The rules, I call it a rule, I don't think it's a law, but the rule in Long Beach is that the gas rates, because it's a city-owned gas company, the gas rates would not be different from the rates that, say, Southern California Gas or the private gas companies are. And I don't think that you or I have much say anyway as to what policies are instituted by the Water Commission. There is no gas commission. So is that attempt to answer, or you want anything further on your question? No. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you so much for doing this. It's been really helpful. I have one question on Prop 30, and I'm confused about Newsom's opposition, frankly. But it sounds like the argument is we don't need more funds to be allocated to zero-emission vehicles, and so why even do it? So, do we know like how much money the state's already allocating, especially to infrastructure and making electric vehicles more accessible?
What I read is that the state is putting in very large, multi-millions of dollars into zero-emission vehicles. And the state did approve 10 million, billion, I get my numbers wrong there, over the next 5 years. Or if I got it backwards, 5 million over the, no, that's right, over the next 5. And what the other thing that the legislature that the state has just done is to adopt the new policy that says as of 2035, all vehicles that are sold will be zero-emission vehicles. And so on one side, the argument is that you won't have any, it won't make a lot of difference as to how many zero-emission vehicles there are by 2035. Everybody's going, that's the only kind of a car you can buy. But, that's a big issue. And the point, the intent, I think, of providing subsidies to make these vehicles, and not anybody can go out and buy a Tesla. And so the idea was to, and I think, what did they say, 50%, 60%, do you remember, Marissa, must be sold, made available to lower income people. And the charging devices would be available, also be subsidized, but also would be available not just out on the, like gas stations out on the road, but even in apartment houses and even in private homes, So the big argument that the governor has made is that this has been placed on the ballot essentially by Lyft as a way, because they're 90% of the miles they're going to cover in 2030 will have to be in vehicles that are zero-emission vehicles. And so his concern is that this is really a bonus for the private driving companies. So that's up to, you can make your decisions on that. Do you have any other, Marissa, any other?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Sorry,
say that,
yes.
that I heard the governor speak, and that is exactly his main objection, is that this benefits specifically Lyft, who has put most of the money into this proposition, so that they will get major subsidies for them. And that's his argument, whether, I don't know whether it's true or not, but that is his major argument against this. It's an interesting thing because it's the governor and the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party. It's an unusual bedfellows here. And he is opposed because he says it's a special interest, similar to the dialysis, that kind of a thing. So,
But I think nobody really objects to encouraging people to buy zero-emission vehicles. Nobody objects to putting more funds into firefighting, forest fires. But I think his argument has been that it's just not fair.
Are there any other questions?
Did you want to have
Did
some
you-
adding to that?
Yes, address
I'm
something?
just talking off the top of my head.
I think you asked how much the state is already spending, and they've committed to spending $10 billion over the next 5 years on ZEVs. And
I want to thank you all for coming. This was sponsored by NCJW and the Social Action Committee here at Temple Israel. And the League of Women Voters is such a helpful and useful organization that educates us so that we can vote intelligently.
Well,
I
we're-
appreciate these three
Thank
women.
you.
And thanks to all of those who joined us online.
Okay, they're,
Thanks to all who joined us online.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
all
you.
of you who joined us online wherever you are.
oh, right in the basket, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Paul, I don't know how to turn this off.
Yes, we'll do it.
One of our friends is like a leading attorney for the online gambling people, and I'll ask him these very questions. Prop 26 says that they have to vote on the Indian property.
Yes.
27 specifically says not on it. So it basically means that these small tribes that have people coming to them won't have people coming and eating in their restaurants and staying in their hotels. That's a huge
Well,
difference.
the big concern that cities have is that it may draw people away from the card clubs. And there are many Hawaiian gardens are supported almost entirely by their card clubs.
So our friend who's the attorney, and he disagrees with you. He said they both cannot exist together.
Well, I will
because
read
of this
it.
particular thing.
Yeah, well,
that
I will,
yeah.
I have it in,
But-
I have the state.
And his comment was 35 states already have it. We're going to get it eventually. It's just a matter of time. And California will approve it.
I didn't recognize you with your mask on. I haven't seen you for a long time. Thank you. Yeah.
Looks like there are about 35 people here. There were 12 people who said something in the chat room, so that's 12. There were two viewers looking at our Facebook feed. So that's 47, almost 50 who know.
Well, that's pretty good. Right.
I'm gonna ask Eric if he can give me a number of the amount of people tagged into the stream.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you. Well, everybody talks to somebody else. So. Yep. Oh, it's I'm not working. My son is coming down to visit me. I don't see him very often. But I would ask him to have to go. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to forget my basket, believe me.
to hear it out loud. You can read these things, and it's so hard to
I
process.
know, and these guys really do a nice job of making it.
We have a really close friend who's an attorney who specializes in online betting. That's his entire practice, and it's huge, multi-billion, gazillion dollars.
Well, one of the commercials that says, and now you're gonna have 15-year-olds betting. I think that's true.
26 isn't got a prayer, it'll never pass.
Right, so I hope they both, in my mind, I was thinking you voted for one or the other. But you can say no to both of them.
No, our friend Dennis says they can't exist together. If they both pass, the one that got the most votes will win.
But I want to vote no on both of them.
I am, except that I'm thinking, there's a lot of money for the state in this, so, that's the only thing, and people are gonna gamble anyway.
It's 10%.